Are we working right now? Is this working? First verse, same as this. I mean, second verse, same as the first. How do I make it so I can see my oh, crudsicles. I can't. I'm having some issues, which is that for some reason, like all of my windows for like Restream have disappeared. I'm gonna say OBS Restream windows disappeared. Okay, Google OBS Restream windows disappeared. Hey, Christina Chancellor. Yeah, I've got a slight issue, but you know what? These are the reasons why we, life isn't easy. I'm streaming a bit later than usual, and I'd like to say it's for like a really good reason. Oh, you know what? I'd like to say that I haven't just made it so that I'm like totally out of focus. Focus. There we go. That wasn't so hard, was it? Oh, oh. You totally clicked the wrong thing just then. Did it literally go out of... I don't know what I'm doing in my life. Anyway, well, the reason I'm streaming late is because I recently found out about like, and I guess this must have been around for a while. It's just called territorial.io, and it's, kind of like a mass, an MMO, I guess, is that it? Strategy game. And, like, I mean, it's kind of addictive, but I think it's probably addictive. Like, I'm the kind of person who, like, I'll discover a new game and it will be really addictive to me for like a week or so, and then I'll completely forget about it. But anyway, I was playing that. I made a best friend on it. Their name was Gay. Their username was Gay. I don't know if they were gay, but they were very friendly. And we like formed a kind of unofficial alliance. I think we just reached that point where we kind of understood each other, and I was like, I understood that if I exposed myself to this gay person, if I exposed my flank by going on the attack, I knew that they weren't going to betray me, and they didn't. And then right at the end, there was like this big empire, and we both kind of went down together because my friend Gay got attacked, and I was like, no one attacks Gay on my watch. So I marched in. Yeah. I don't know if I was using guns or swords. It's just a random pixel. But whatever it was, or yeah. I came in and saved the day, and then just as I thought everybody was going to be dead, they well, we did die, but at the last minute, my friend Gay sent me a love heart. Anyway, all right. I suppose I'll actually introduce the video. So we're going to be doing the same thing we did last time. The what's it called? The video's called Turfs and False Consciousness. And I can't remember exactly. Oh god, I should get some more water. Oh well. So, give me a second. Wait a minute. So, oh hello. Flames to dust, lovers to friends. Why do all good things come to an end? Flames to dust, lovers to friends. Why do all good things come? Da, 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 Dun, 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 dun. Hello, CC Taylor. Hi, I just found your channel yesterday. Well, I'm glad that you did. You happen to have caught me. What's it he says at the end of Fight Club? You caught me at a very strange period in my life. I say that, it's not that strange. It's just that I've slightly mixed up my content from, you know. The thing is, like, I'm not quite. So, what I need to do at some point, but keep putting off because I'm a lazy man with a dark soul and a black heart, is doing some kind of scripted, because like my plan, like I say, is to do like 50%, or probably not 50% actually, because it's, but like basically do this unedited live reaction videos mixed with comparatively way more edited scripted kind of shorter videos. So it's kind of best of both worlds. Both extremes. Because before I was being all lukewarm. I was like kind of doing lightly edited kind of videos that were like an hour or so in length. Yeah, but whereas my plan is to maybe do like not edited at all videos that are like 2 hours, and then I'm gonna try and do like yeah, very scripted, very edited videos that'll be like 20 minutes max. Unless your name's not Max, in which case 20 minutes, Lisa. Hello. Okay. I regret not getting water already. Okay, you know what? Screw it. I'm just gonna get water. Screw it. Okay. Why didn't I get water soon? I must have. I remember my old camp master. Nobody could start a campfire faster. He said, always carry a plaster. I do need to find out where we were last time. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I haven't drunk as much water as I usually do. Okay. So, oh, good, it's finally started working. You know what? So I was adding the timestamps to, last live stream, and then they weren't showing up. And I was like, well, blow this. I'm not doing bloody, thingies, timestamps when it's not even going to show up. Okay, so we were 40, wait, let me check. Give it a second. 43 and 1 minute in, so basically 43 minutes. So 43.
This is going.
Oh, this is going. I feel like there's a lot of vocal fry in this person's performance. Like, hello there, everyone. Today we're going. I don't know. I can't really do vocal fry. Wait, I feel like I'm doing it literally right now. Okay, yeah, I can do it. There we go. I think I'm right in saying this person does a lot of vocal fry, just so you can take him seriously or whatever. I don't really know what the effect of vocal fry is. Okay, everyone, get ready to play.
There's a long history amongst upper-class males.
Okay, maybe it's not vocal fry, actually.
Perhaps you can sense where this is going. It is not a strategy available to the housewife, the prostituted woman, or the abused child. They are the objects of transgression rather than its subject.
Maybe we do need more context.
And present is not enough. But one ought to question her aims in saying this. The answer is to construct the second angle of attack. Transgression has a long history amongst upper-class males. Perhaps you can sense where this is going. It is not a strategy available to the housewife, the prostituted woman, or the abused child. They are the objects of transgression rather than its subjects. These ideas have led to the notion that there should be recognition of the existence of many genders. The many genders might include, in this understanding, a butch lesbian or a femme lesbian, a drag queen or a masculine gay SM top, as well as the feminine heterosexual woman or masculine heterosexual man, plus other combinations. This approach to gender detaches it from its material base in the oppression of women. The problem becomes simply one of the scarcity of gender opportunities.
Shall I do the boring old I agree with that response?
For like the fifth time, and not the last, good questions, bad answers. The problem with this diagnosis of the situation
I feel like it's really patronizing. Like, it just comes across really patronizing how much this guy has been like, they're asking the right questions, but just the silly them. It's kind of like, I don't know, like it's kind of the measuredness of it. It's like, well, you did okay. You know, you thought of the right questions, so well done there. It's just you didn't quite get the answers, so you know maybe just try again.
is that it uses the TERF lens where trans people are not real as means to argue that the oppression of queer people is distracting from the oppression of women. Wait, here's a question that's
Wait, what? That's not even. I'm a bit confused. Like that's not what the point was that was just made there. Like it wasn't saying that it's distracting from the oppression of women. It's just not accurately describing the oppression of women by acting as if the oppression of women is something other than extending from gender as a construction that reflects material biological reality in a kind of distorted way, which is of course the criticism of gender.
popular lately for unfortunate reasons. What is a woman? How does Jeffries actually define a woman? What is gender to her? The lesbian feminist position is clarified to be one of.
Sorry, you kind of that's a bit of what's the word I'm looking for? Like assuming. Well, whatever. I don't know. Basically, the point is that the claim "what is a woman" and "what is gender" seem to be being conflated. But of course, the argument of gender critical people will be that a woman isn't a gender. Woman is biological reality. Gender is something wholly objectionable.
Abolishing gender. I am no fan of the word gender and would prefer to abolish it in favor of expressions which refer directly to the political foundation of male domination. Thus, I prefer to describe masculinity as male-dominant behavior and femininity as female subordinate behavior. No multiplicity of genders can emerge from this perspective. To clarify, this isn't abolishing gender, really. It's changing what the two options are and, per the last line, keeping the options to two.
Sorry, the point is, you're right, this isn't abolishing gender, you foolish person, because this is talking about gender as an analytic, descriptive tool, not as a kind of normative expectation. So, yeah, this isn't where you would expect to see, like, yeah, gender critical feminists aren't saying we should abolish gender as an analytic, descriptive tool, because, of course, gender exists like in reality, like femininity and masculinity exists. Now the point being made here is that Sheila is saying, sorry, apparently I'm on first name basis, Sheila Jeffries is saying that the use of that language, obviously people can always kind of quibble the terminology used to describe reality and kind of the implications of that terminology. And what Jeffries is saying here is, hey, don't don't use the words kind of femininity or masculinity. Use those other terms because they accurately describe the situation. But the point is, this was not like nobody. I mean, if anybody's saying they want to be a gender abolitionist as far as kind of their analysis is concerned, then they're being very wrong, because of course you can't abolish gender from your analysis because gender exists. That's like saying you want to be a racial abolitionist in terms of your understanding of society. Well, race exists in society. It is an undeniable social construct that has effects on the real world, so you would just be being wrong. Hello? Oh, sorry, I know what I need to do. Wait, one sec.
Most charitable, it could be read as saying that the genders are male and the oppressed, and the lack of multitudes is because those categories are only designed for political expediency. But given how gatekept womanhood is, the
Gatekept. In other words, defined.
framework of her ideology is readily apparent. The world is defined by two genders, oppressor and oppressed. In some sense, this
Sorry, it's not the world is defined. It's that is an aspect of the world that is worth an analyzing. Again, like that's just wrong.
crystallizes what I referred to earlier as Vitigue's inability to envision a world post-class struggle, an outcome of liberation. What Jeffries has done
Wait, what? Okay, I'll see if that's going to be explained. But apparently, the claim there is that Jeffries isn't able to envision a world post, liberation.
is create a new eternal category which does not see men as party to the possibility of liberation or capable of not being oppressors.
Why? Where are you getting that from? That's not an indication of what was said just then. Based on what we've been shown so far, there's just masculinity, which is male dominant behavior, and there's femininity, which is female dominant behavior. But there's no indication that it would be impossible for a male to reject male dominance. There's no indication here that feminist liberation is impossible. So you're just being wrong.
As such, her future is one where women truly do separate in order to render the oppressor class moot. This is not a liberation, and it forgoes the class mentality of eventually reaching parity in favor of mere escape, an eternal struggle of carving out and safeguarding women's spaces. Leaving behind transgressions, here's another argument that
Yeah, so again, that was just continuing off of the weird false premise. And, I'm not going to, I know there are, female separatists, and, that's its own thing. It's kind of irrelevant because obviously that's not, you don't have to be a female separatist to be gender critical. So it's kind of literally just a very kind of secondary discussion. Yes.
might
Sorry, I read what you said, CC Taylor. Yes, exactly. Like it's about, ultimately one would. Sorry, I did make a noise and I want it on the record. It may have sounded suspicious, but it was just me making a creaky sound on my chair. But yeah, I would agree. Of course, we should want to expand our understandings of masculinity and femininity because the fact that masculinity is viewed in a limited way is exactly the reason why transgender identity came about.
be quite familiar. Any lesbians or gay men who question the consonance of political interests between themselves and bisexuals are likely to be accused of being monosexists, i.e., interested only in the opposite sex and not both, or gender fascists. Ditto, C. Jeffries, 1999. This is literally the same empty argument seen in the recent BBC article, and the citation is herself? Okay, so the thing she's citing, her own work, is about the condition of bisexuals erasing lesbians, which is also a critique levied at trans existence, especially gender nonconforming people, and the queer umbrella. One choice line from the work is this. Most of the rhetoric of bisexual politics that reproaches lesbian feminism and sets up bisexuality as superior is based on either a profound ignorance or determined avoidance of the ideas and practices of lesbian feminism. There's really no way I can read this other than that Jeffries and people like her see sexualities as teams one chooses, as something enacted for ideological purpose, which, again, the ism thing.
Well, look, you've already gone through the fact that there exists such an idea as, kind of political lesbianism. By the way, I don't know why, you seem to be assuming there that because somebody might hypothetically advocate for some form of political lesbianism, they're therefore assuming that is the entirety of what sexuality can be, which is your assumption. Um, Obviously, somebody might argue for, there is some kind of political relevance to lesbianism, but that doesn't mean that they're saying that's the entirety of what lesbianism could ever be, or that heterosexuality is, obviously therefore some kind of political team or anything like that.
Both the Raymond misguided pity or invading women's spaces angles and the Jeffries political choice angle to approaching trans identities likely stem from their understandings of the concepts laid out by Wittig, even if distinct from Wittig herself. It follows, from a particular reading of Wittig, that realigning the oppressed sex with their own interests is a matter of consciousness, which we see in the works of Raymond. It follows from another reading of Wittig that identity is not identity, that things like being a lesbian are choices, political choices, worthy of wearing the ism on the end of them.
Why does that make it not an identity? There's like so many times in this video where just like things are said with no justification, just like totally randomly. And I just don't know what to say in response, because like, who said that they're not identities? Who says that if something's political, it's not an identity? What's your obsession with like this whole ism thing?
And that, in that worldview, the other possibilities of gender and sexuality must also be isms. The conclusion this brings Jeffries to is one of justified antagonism. Those who were given the chance for class consciousness have turned away from it. Those who are antagonists seek to infiltrate. Those who critique us seek to demean our cause. Really, there isn't much more to unpack from here. Most people watching already probably have a sense of the present or have connected things as they've heard them discussed, drawn up their own examples. And in truth, the gender-critical ideology has been stagnant for decades. Trans exclusion...
I love that again. So that like that kind of presentation of things, because we already had that kind of comment of like gender critical ideas haven't changed in the last 50 years. And it's like, yeah, because they're right. Like, it's not that they're stagnant. It's not that there hasn't been an ability to think of other points of view. It's that there's no, or, other kind of ideas and things like that. It's that there's no real reason to. I mean, the reality is, of course, that in some minor ways, I think gender critical ideas have evolved significantly, and there have been new ideas, and the kind of criticisms have become more robust, more complete, more refined, all of that sort of stuff. Of course, by the very nature of the fact that trans identity has changed quite dramatically over the past few decades, it has been necessary for gender critical feminism to kind of realign its focuses in order to kind of respond to that. But at its core, you could say, yeah, I mean, basically the same central arguments have been the same arguments for the past 50 years, and that's because they work. They are good arguments. And again, I kind of already repeated or spoke about some of that stuff earlier. Like, for example, you might say, well, in science, you're supposed to like change your point of view, and of course, I would point out that actually science has been, pretty clear on a lot of stuff for centuries now, and not really changed its mind about it. Like, a lot of the time when you're talking about things which are true, there will be some changes, but the overwhelming kind of substance of a discipline will be stagnant, if you want to use that term, mathematics. There are things about maths that have been held to for thousands of years, the most core important things. So is maths stagnant? It's just a very ridiculous phrasing to basically criticize something for being so correct that it hasn't had to change.
Has only evolved in its rhetoric, not its understanding of the world. How else would we get to that Truth and Fiction page by Raymond where a noted gender scholar presumes some kind of trans schism is on the horizon because of an Australian court decision that basically allowed there to be an other option on forms? Jeffries herself offers little more than iterations or targets for rage, be it bisexuals or trans people, whoever she sees as destroying women or diluting their cause. The few things of interest she has to say regarding the presence of neoliberalism within queer spaces or the potential reproduction of patriarchy.
Sorry, I like how you get that. The few things of interest, as if like there has been any effort to debunk. Like, I don't even feel like I've had to respond to any criticism of the central gender critical point of view. Like, I've pointed out a few instances where this person, Rosenkrantz, has just fundamentally misunderstood things or misrepresented things or made wild claims without actually substantiating them. But there hasn't actually been an attempt from Rosenkrantz to challenge or in any way meaningfully dispute the basic gender critical point of view. So saying, well, oh, what they have to say about neoliberalism, that's okay. Yeah, well, you haven't shown how anything they say isn't, that there is anything that gender critical people are saying that isn't okay. So, yeah, it just seems like a bit of a weird thing to make a concession on the small number of things that are apparently okay when you haven't even demonstrated in any meaningful capacity how the broad claims are anything other than equally correct.
Patriarchy in queer spaces via the domination by gay men, those thoughts are lost to time with respect to the gender critical movement. There's a continued assertion that queer, with its components of people having sex ever, inclusiveness, and sadomasochism, which we all know is one of the acronym components and only ever reproduces heterosexual dynamics, are assimilating gay and lesbian groups to the contemporary power structure rather than challenging that structure. There's a supreme and bitter irony to the fact that, if broken down,
So I want to say, like, the list, like that whole thing of like the notes was, I guess, supposed to imply that it's unreasonable to think what makes the term queer harmful is it's including all sorts of stuff that has nothing to do. Like, it's kind of funny because the first thing said was about people having sex. Like, the point is, people's random, made up, delusional identities are being thrown in alongside legitimate sexuality, and that is a problem. It's that simple. Um, but yeah, okay, we'll see if there's any attempt to, I guess, first of all, engage with the main argument, not misspell the word oppressed, and yeah, actually refute, anything.
Jeffries ultimately defines women by their oppression, borrowing the legacy of the second wave, but fails to reconcile that all she really does is with
Borrowing, as if Sheila Jeffries like is not a feminist and therefore it's not borrowing the second wave. I don't know if she would count as a second wave feminist herself. I'm not quite sure when she first started, but she certainly was. Like, it's not borrowing. She's a feminist. You can't. Like, it's so weird. Like saying it would be like saying that Chairman Mao borrowed Marxist theory, and it's like, no, he didn't. He was one of the most significant Marxist theorists of his time. So yeah, it's just a weird terming or weird phrasing.
all the talk of transgression and invocations of sadomasochism is define women as bottoms? I mean, that's where this goes, right? If you define sadomasochism as inflicting heterosexuality onto sex and see that as oppression, and you define women as the oppressed sex first and foremost, then you're just pigeonholing women as subs/bottoms and vice versa.
I didn't know that. I thought that being a bottom had really nothing to do with whether or not you were a dominant or submissive, but I don't really want to get into that. Basically, the point being made, first of all, like, idiot, undeniably, uh, women in most kind of works that show that kind of whole BDSM thing are in submissive positions. Women being dominatrixes is actually very rare. Uh, it's not that well represented. It's like basically a niche kind of kink, in contrast to women being submissive, which is just perceived to be normal sexuality. So it's entirely reasonable for somebody to criticize kink, not as if the idea of women being dominant doesn't exist, but the fact it is so underrepresented as to not really be relevant because it is not the prevailing reality of power dynamics in sexual relationships. It's not that. I mean, I don't really get it because, like, again, I'm like faced with women are bottoms with a question mark, as if like this person has no idea that yes, women um do tend to be the submissive party in any kind of sexual encounter where there is a dominance versus submissive kind of dynamic going on. That's just undeniable. I'm not sure what is confusing Rosenkrantz apart from seemingly everything.
You're making assigned bottom at birth a real thing. Stop. Stop that.
I don't get it. Like I'm very confused. It's just first of all, like, okay, it almost seems as if Rosenkrantz is acting as if anybody is saying that women are like supposed to be submissive. Also, I don't understand what the use of the term bottom is. It's kind of weird because like this use of bottom is very strange because the more appropriate word would be submissive because of course the reason why bottom's weird is because you don't have to be like, as far as I know, bottom basically describes in gay relationships the person who gets penetrated. Like that is my understanding. And that perhaps maybe tends to be accompanied by being the submissive partner, but it's certainly not the same thing. You can't just like substitute one in for the other. So why not just use the way more appropriate wording of submissive? In which case it would be saying women are submissive in sexual relationships because of how they're raised and all that kind of stuff. Um, but of course, I guess if you said that, then it wouldn't really work as well or be as easy to make fun of because it's just an obviously true statement. Like saying women are bottoms is, I guess, sounds kind of weird because you've taken a word for gay men and applied it to women. Um, but if you said the opposite, or sorry, if you said the more accurate, women are submissive, then you would not, you would just be using a word that can describe anybody regardless of their sexuality, and you would have to confront the fact that yeah, that is clearly a consequence of the kind of contemporary, like gender dynamics and expectations and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I think my theory is that Rosenkrantz must be gay, and I say that because like that's my only explanation for why um, the word bottom would be used here. Because again, that's I think that's a gay term. I don't know if it's a lesbian term. I don't know if lesbians use that. I would kind of, well, I don't know, but yeah, the whole thing's a bit weird. I mean, to clarify, I'm not saying the gay thing is weird. I'm just saying it's weird to see some dude just use a term which, as far as I know, literally is only used with reference to like gay sexual pairings, man on man sexual pairings, and apply it to women. And I just don't understand what the point of that is supposed to be.
Jeffries' major innovation is bringing forward more of the openly transphobic talk, shifting the focus from one of arrogant pity to one of rage against perceived transgressions and ideology. The endpoint of Jeffries' argument against the queer is that she and people of her thought, the lesbian feminist TERFs, see queer politics as a twofold foe. The first threat of queer is seeking to destroy lesbians via offering them an assimilationist path and by transing them.
Yes.
And the other threat of queer, as they see it, is plainly stated as encouraging transgression, but understood to mean encouraging oppressors, which includes trans women in their alleged primary instinctual function, harming women.
So I guess like what this is saying is that like queer obviously kind of has attached to it the whole like king cook pride thing and all that sort of stuff. This I will say like it's not an argument I've really heard people bring up. Like I've not really heard anybody say that queer is uniquely responsible for kind of pushing those power dynamics of subordination and domination that obviously is harmful for women. I would say that there's many other parts of society that do that far more. But, I mean, insofar as queer is basically just, a massive societal psyop, yeah, I would imagine it would push all of those harmful ideas just as much as any other aspect of society would. Um, Grace Lavery says the woman is the person who adopts a passive role in sexual intercourse, i.e., the woman is the person doing the dishes. That is my favorite kind of sexual intercourse. Um, no, yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like people, I mean the problem is, yeah, like it's the classic, it's the classic issue of either like when it comes to trans identity, either it means nothing and it's just a word you want to be called, or it does mean something, in which case it almost always seems to end up meaning something profoundly sexist. Like a woman is a person who adopts the role as a woman, or has the social function of a woman, or is treated by society as a woman. And it's like, well, at that point, you're just defining woman by sexism and by patriarchy, which of course is especially hilarious when they will then turn around and say that gender critical feminists are defining women by their oppression.
Time is a flat circle. I've never actually known how that phrase works, to be honest, but I know what it signifies. So, by now, it's probably not much of a question how we get to this.
In the meantime, while we're trying to get through to the decision makers, we have to try to
Helen Joyce is so based.
limit the harm. And that means reducing or keeping down the number of people who transition. And that's for two reasons. One of them is that every one of those people is a person who's been damaged.
I just find it so weird. Like the whole point of this video is basically just, hey, look, this movement echoes the founders of the movement. It's like, yeah, duh. Like, can you imagine like if like anti-communist made a video which was just like going through Marxist theory and then explaining how Marxist theory still influences the beliefs, actions, and words of contemporary communists and Marxists, and that was it. That was the video. Like, there's no attempt to actually show why Marxism is wrong, nothing like that. It's basically just, look, you know Marxism? You know Marxists? You know Marx? Well, guess what if I told you those three things are connected? It's like, okay, yeah, that's kind of what I was expecting.
But the second one is every one of those people is basically, a huge problem to a sane world. Like if you've got people that, and whether they're transitioned, whether they're happily transitioned, whether they're unhappily transitioned, whether they're detransitioned, if you've got people who've dissociated from their sex in some way, every one of those people is someone who needs special accommodation.
I want to know, like, who do you get like a neon sign from? Because I noticed like Helen Stanaland has like wine with women as like a neon sign, and it's like obviously I assume that has to be custom made. And I think it's like how much does a custom made neon sign go for nowadays? You know, can I get a King Critical neon sign? Um, yeah. Uh,
In a sane world where we re-acknowledge the truth of sex. And I mean, the people who've been damaged by it, the children who've been put through this, those people deserve every accommodation we can possibly make. But every one of them is a difficulty.
Gender critical as a name is, on first blush,
all right, I want to read this. Okay, let's look at the Zen diagram. Zen diagram, Venn diagram. So gender critical is the big thing, just meaning, I guess, people who are critical of trans identity. Feminists, billionaire authors of wizard fiction for children. Okay, that's just like, I don't know, like it's so lame. Like it just is so brazenly misogynistic just to dismiss J.K. Rowling's accomplishments like that. Like, and it's so petty and mean spirited. Like honestly, I used to be quite comfortably in the camp of, oh, like adults obsessing over Harry Potter is kind of cringe, and to an extent I still am. Obviously, I don't talk about it as much because, um, you know, I agree with J.K. Rowling, so I'm not going to be out there like denigrating people for enjoying our work. But the thing is, at the same time, also, I wouldn't be out there denigrating people for enjoying our work anyway, or like attacking people for, um, like liking her accomplishments. Like, yes, when that British MP said that the Conservatives winning the election was like the Death Eaters taking over Hogwarts, that was very cringe, and everyone made fun of it rightly. But it's like that's not a basis for dismissing J.K. Rowling's incredible accomplishments. I don't know. Yeah, the whole thing just seems so gross misogynistic, mean-spirited, bitter, every single like, and not even like, I'd say every single negative adjective, but not even like any of the cool negative adjectives. Not like, you know, evil. Because evil implies, I don't know, something a bit more substantive than just miserable whining about how a woman you don't like achieves something pretty objectively incredible in terms of the success of the Harry Potter universe, and then you sit there with your worthless existence going, oh, but I'm gonna say it's a wizard fiction for children. It's like, oh, goodness me. Anyway, just not a nice person, this Rosenkrauts. Um, but yeah, okay, so then you get feminists. I mean, I guess there's at least a recognition that J.K. Rowling is a feminist. And then there's TERFs, and then there's radical feminists. Okay, actually, you know what? This is a pretty boring Venn diagram, but it did allow us to kind of get a window into, this person's mentality and attitude towards women.
A confusing one. Are they critical of gender? That sounds like a queer theory thing. Butler is critical of gender, after all. But two things have to be kept in mind: the lesbian feminist origin and critique from that, and the anti-ideology positioning. A confusing one. Are they
we can possibly make, but every one of them is a difficulty.
Gender critical as a name is, on first blush, a confusing one. Are they critical of gender? That sounds like a queer theory thing.
No, yeah, they are critical of gender. Gender critical means critical of gender. Queer theory is not critical of gender because they will literally cry if you disrespect their gender.
Butler is critical of gender, after all. But two things have to be kept in mind: the lesbian feminist origin and critique from that, and the anti-ideology position that TERFs/gender criticals employ against supposed ideologies. Though the former of the two came first and might have had a stronger impact on the gender critical designation at the start, by now it's very clear that the name works on the presumption that they are anti-genderism, critical of gender ideology.
And critical of gender.
Now, as for what that means, I don't know. It's
What are you doing? What are you doing, you waste of space? The thing is, like, I will say this. I feel like, again, people are probably gonna watch this person's video, Rosenkrauts, and be like, wow, this is high effort. But it's really not. Like, it's not high effort to read three authors, because there was Monique Wittig as well, but three authors, not understand them, or at least, some points presented here, clearly not understand what's being said, and then, includes a nice little slideshow to accompany your misunderstandings. Like, that's not high effort. It's not impressive. I mean, admittedly, I suppose you could say what I do isn't exactly high effort either, but, I have the advantage of being naturally talented at, critical thinking, unlike this person who just has no idea what they're talking about. But yeah, I mean, even then, like, while what I do here isn't high effort, my actual, like, reading into topics is. And yeah, again, I mean, admittedly, I don't have to really try to understand the points. So again, it's not that high effort because I can usually just like read somebody say something and understand what they're saying, because that shouldn't be that hard. But I don't know. Apparently, for some people like Rosenkrauts, it is. Apparently, for some people, you hear a criticism of like pretty basic criticism of how kink is demeaning to women, and you think, are you saying that women are gay men who get penetrated? No. Anyway, but yeah, I guess the reason why I said like it's not high effort is because, of course, here you have the fact that it's just what is gender ideology, blah blah blah. Like, there is so little understanding of actual gender critical ideas. The video is very bad.
It's a nonsense word, just like when transgenderism and trans ideology get used in order to pretend the gender criticals are an ideological movement in dialogue with another ideological movement.
How is it not an ideological movement? You are saying that being a woman means something beyond biological reality. That is a claim about reality. It is an ideological movement. What is transgenderism? It is the political activism surrounding the belief that there is something to being a woman beyond biological reality.
They're not critical of gender, they're critical of genderism, which is
They're critical of gender.
nobody calls themselves a genderist. It's just a scare word.
The fact that nobody calls themselves something doesn't mean that it's not an accurate word to describe people. Oh, now you're going to get the stupid EU thing.
This is made more apparent internationally, i.e., with groups outside the Anglosphere who label themselves anti-gender because gender isn't a word outside of English. It's like how my Norwegian friends refer to Facebook as face because face isn't a word there, so saying face is sufficient to convey what they mean. Or, more relevant and far more hilarious, wokisme in French right-wing discourse.
Okay, I just want to say, like, this isn't as dumb as Ponderful, who was like said that the Polish anti-gender movement is literally like the same thing as the British gender critical movement, or the kind of British and American gender critical movement. And of course, there the obvious response was, well, they don't have the word gender in Poland, like, or at least the word, the English word for gender. So they, when they use that title, are just using it as an identity. It doesn't actually speak to any meaningful claim. And if you were to ask them in what actual sense are they anti-gender, they wouldn't be able to tell you, because they're very obviously not. Like, spoiler alert, traditional Catholic conservatives aren't against gender. They aren't against traditional masculinity and traditional femininity. But having said that, here, I guess it's just a meaningless point, because essentially, literally, it's just, hey, foreign people use words and don't necessarily know what they mean. Yeah, okay, that's whatever. Who cares about that?
For anyone still stuck on how gender critical slash TERFs call themselves feminist, there's no grand authority on who gets to call themselves that, and while it's partially an earned identification, one born out of or disproven by one's actions, they do have a particular perspective on advancing the cause of women. If two people are voting for Scottish independence, and one of them wants an ethno-state and to forcibly relocate all foreigners to Orkney, and the other wants to join the EU but still believes in a Scottish sovereign state, we don't get to decide that the one we disagree with isn't a Scottish nationalist simply because of their vision of the future. They'd have to argue or act against the...
Okay, so obviously, like, a kind of manipulative analogy, because it suggests that, like, gender critical people are, it's pretty obviously trying to imply gender critical people would be equivalent to ethno-nationalists, which is, of course, nonsense. But the point itself, I mean, is kind of fair enough. Like, yes, I would agree. You can't just say that gender critical feminists aren't feminists when they very clearly are.
interest of Scotland, and that's where it gets messy with the gender critical comparison. I'm just not sure it's worth our time, given that TERFs have a historical legacy and connection to the Radfem movement. It's a bit of a semantic battle, and you'll never win an ideologically...
Yeah, you know what? Actually, it occurs to me, literally, this video just functions as a W for gender critical, because it doesn't offer any meaningful objection to the gender critical point of view, apart from pointing out that the gender critical point of view is so robust that it hasn't needed to change for 50 years, because we've been making the same arguments for 50 years and they've not been able to give a response, and therefore we've just been able to say the same thing. We haven't had to, like, change our arguments to like, avoid the fact that our arguments have been disputed or defeated. Like, it's crazy that I can just respond to TRAs and make the exact same arguments Janice Raymond made 50 years ago, and yet they still don't have a response. They still don't respond to me. They still can't actually offer any good quality rebuttals. Kaylin Conrad still started off a 5.5-hour video about the gender critical movement, saying that they weren't going to engage at all with the question of, are trans women women? That's how bad they are. That's how little they have going for them in terms of defeating our point of view. So of course we're going to stick with it for 50 years. But all of that said, therefore, no meaningful argument against a gender critical point of view. The only thing we have, therefore, is this video showing how the gender critical movement is authentically feminist. So literally, this video, I mean, I'm not going to send it to somebody and be like, watch this video. It will be really useful. But what I can do in the future is be like, hey, if you're going to say we're not feminists, you should know that even a kind of TRA YouTuber has made an over an hour long video where they've literally gone through all of early, or significant amounts of radfem gender critical history and gone through it. So obviously, I think they misunderstand it. I think they get it wrong. But if you are a TRA and you're going to say that the gender critical movement isn't feminist, well, you should know these people disagree. It kind of reminds me of like somebody like Bart Ehrman from a Christian perspective. Bart Ehrman gets a lot wrong about Christianity and Christian theology, but he has said some stuff which is very significant. Things like, for example, that even without official Roman adoption of the Christian religion, it still would have become the dominant religion. Things like that none of the variation in the early Christian texts affect any core Christian doctrine. So, of course, if you are a Christian, you would not point to Bart Ehrman as an authority. You would not say, hey, Bart Ehrman really understands Christian theory or anything like that. But what you might say is, hey, Bart Ehrman is a critic of Christianity, and even he admits that it was a movement that did not spread by violence or power or authority. Even he admits that the early sources are consistent and corroborate one singular theology, things like that. And it's kind of the same thing here. Of even this person, do they understand what they're talking about? No. Do they understand early gender critical thought? Clearly not. But even they, coming from the TRA perspective, can recognize that the gender critical movement is authentically feminist. So there we go. Point being, it's a big W.
Pure feminism. As for what to call them, I can't offer perfect advice here. Like I said, nobody gets to wholly claim feminism, but they're not exactly trying to, and getting mad about the RF or even the F part of TERF mostly comes off as ignorance of their roots. But applying TERF to conservative women or whatever is wrong too. If you want to take the time to suss out their particulars, you can, but gender critical is a nice umbrella, even if it's a nonsensical phrase. Short version.
It's not nonsensical.
TERFs are a subset of radfems within gender criticals with a connection to and hopes to consume the radfem movement. Or I guess you could call them trans exterminationists at this point and not mention the RF part or confine them to the humble goal of exclusion because they're well beyond that. But that's not copacetic to pithy tweets, I suppose. Gender critical is probably the widest net at most and politically expedient. If these folks want to make a
I just find it so hilarious that it's not like they're so far away from actually engaging with the arguments of gender critical people. All they're doing is spending this huge amount of time talking about what should we call them? What would it be okay to call them? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I mean, look, I'm not saying that's not something worth considering, like obviously it's always worth having a conversation about whether or not trans-identified male is the best term or, whatever else. Like if someone wants to offer an alternative term and things like that. I'm not saying that having discussions about what terminology it's appropriate to use is wrong, but having that discussion in lieu of engaging with the actual arguments just seems really cringe. To just be like, hey, what should we call them?
Fuss in the comments, I'm ready for them. My channel grew 100-fold because of a video about Eurocentrism in a video game. It was forged in the heat of ignorant rage. I think I can handle gender criticals. But if you're one of them and made it this far and you're enraged and ready to crack those knuckles and get typing, maybe you'll want to wait for my next paragraph so you can be 50 times more enraged.
Okay, good.
Welcome to the obligatory leftist political video segment where I must compare a movement I disagree with to the rise of fascism. I know that's a hard thing for some centrists to watch because they see it as an illiberal attack, a slander, but I studied this stuff for half a decade, so welcome to—
Oh dear. Okay. Well, let's hope that, like, in a rare kind of form, this Rosenkreuz person has actually studied something and learned about it.
To my—
Yeah, like that's the thing. I'm not angry. Well, I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated with, and I guess I'm embarrassed. on quite a few things. You know what? I just realized I feel like maybe the Twitch chat is off. Either that or there's nobody on Twitch. Let's see if the Twitch chat is happening. Nope, there's been no comments on Twitch. That's interesting. I mean, it's fine. I'm not angry about it. Okay. So, earned opinion.
There are two bits of comparison that come to mind for me.
See, the thing is, there's a very realistic chance I won't have anything to say in response to this. Okay, and yeah, the Twitch chat does work. Yeah, like there's a chance I won't have anything to say because it could just be like so dumb that I'm bored. But we'll see.
One is the way fascists tend to respond to the idea of class consciousness, or workers being aware of their value or frustrated with the genuine grievances of living within capitalism as a laborer. The gender criticals, as I've displayed, routinely manage to bring up, to notice, difficult questions in the realm of sex, gender, feminism, and transexistence itself. But the answers they provide always lean into fear and control, tactics of eliminationist legalism, using liberal power structures to create legal policies of hate. To exist within a decorum they claim to want to disrupt. Now, does this mean radical feminists are fascists? No, not at all. Especially not when we go beyond the trans-exclusionary segments of the movement. If anything, the gender fascists are those who rely on mythologized roles, exceptionalism, and all that.
So, trans people, they have mythologized roles. Oh my goodness. There we go. So, there's your admission there. TRAs are the gender fascists.
That bit of fatigue I showed early on. Those people probably better fit the Echo definition of a fascist. But there's another connected comparison to make. In 1919, Heinrich Mann, the brother of Thomas Mann, a progressive novelist himself, and an ardent critic of the rise of fascism, wrote an article describing his experience with German anti-Semitism growing up and the prevalence of it in the press of even metropolitan global cities like Vienna. In the Jew, I still saw only a man who was of a different religion. And therefore, on the grounds of human tolerance, I was against the idea that he should be attacked because he had a different faith. And so, I considered that the tone adopted by the anti-Semitic press in Vienna was unworthy of the cultural tradition of a great people.
Okay, I feel like, is this about to argue, like, that, well, that he just saw it as a different belief, and therefore he was being respectful? Because is there not an understanding here that that's exactly how gender critical people view trans identity? It is a different belief, and it's a belief I disagree with. So basically, I would say that my opinion on trans identity is apparently the same as Heinrich Mann's opinion on Judaism. It's a different belief and a belief that I disagree with. People should not be attacked for it. But I would disagree with it.
Responding to Heinrich Mann's article, Hitler mentioned
Oh yeah, exactly, feminazi.
him in Mein Kampf, actually, saying, wait, hold on, why can't I find the quote? Oh, wait, no, sorry, I mixed things up. That was the Mein Kampf Hitler quote I just read. Oops. Hitler doesn't just start with hate speech. In fact, he tells a whole story of how he believed anti-Semitism was a fool's errand. There's a wrong way to be hateful to him. A dumb way, an ignorant way, not befitting the cultural traditions of a great people. When TERFs say they're not trans...
Wait, I'm not sure what the point of that was supposed to be. Like, what's the point? Hitler just said... So the quote was Hitler saying, I thought that Jews just had different beliefs and shouldn't be attacked for that. And is the implication, therefore, that gender critical people... Because that's obviously the correct belief to have. Like, that if someone has a different religion, they have a different religion, but they shouldn't be attacked for that, they just have a different faith. Like, that's obviously the correct point to have. So I guess the implication is that, well, you can start with the correct belief and then change to an evil belief. And it's like, well, yeah, that can happen with anything. I'm very confused, but we'll see.
Transphobic, this is how they're imagining themselves, as someone who sees the bad reasons to hate a trans person and scoffs, but knows the real reasons. I am not a transphobe. I merely follow the science. I merely look at statistics. I am a sex realist. At least with Raymond, we can take solace in knowing that, since her book came out in 1979...
So literally the point... So the point there, as far as I can tell, was trans identified people, sorry, gender critical people would say, well, I don't think trans identified people should be attacked. I don't think that they're evil or like some great horrendous other. I just think that they're talking nonsense and I disagree with them. In the exact same way that somebody who, might say that on the subject of Jews, they might say, well, they have a different religion. It's a religion I might disagree with, but they're still people. They should be respected and all that kind of stuff. Basically the same thing. But I guess the implication is, well, you might say that, but what if you don't actually believe it? That's like, okay, well, you can say that about anything. Goodness me.
And there have been people asking her, who cares that trans people exist? Why are you so worked up over this? And for Jeffries, her latest book, which she expected to rock the world, largely went ignored. And I know that those are both statements about the reception of their rhetoric, not responses to it, but I think that perspective is important to remember. I don't have the energy to go into the sock puppet allegation / discourse after all this, but I will say that this is why the threat they pose is primarily produced by how serious the media class take them and their complaints and demands.
Yeah, like women are going to struggle within a patriarchal society to make their voices heard and to counter systemic forms of oppression. That's not news.
That's why things like the Lily Kate article are so important. For a look at
Hello, Luna Faye. We're listening to a really dumb person.
that, see Sean's BBC escalation.
Oh, we did just get a really good argument, actually. The argument was, one time Hitler said something that didn't sound bigoted. So maybe, if you say something that doesn't sound bigoted, you might actually be Hitler. Which is a really good argument, to be fair. Like, you can't argue with that. Like, I mean, tell you what, I will be sure next time I say something not bigoted to think to myself, but wait a minute, that one time Hitler said something that didn't sound bigoted either. So, I've got to think about whose company I'm putting myself in here.
Series. In fact, that article is what got me into thinking about all of this in the first place. That the BBC felt it sufficient to quote a survey that included the other well-known quote of Raymond's transsexual empire was almost unbelievable. They might as well have published an article about black people that cited its crime statistics from a webpage with the 14 words plastered across the top. Also, can I just say that I haven't seen this mentioned before. There's an acknowledgement section to this supposed credible survey, and ignoring how unprofessional that idea alone is, it ends with, for all the women who have spoken up and organized this last few years for women and lesbians' rights, leafleting with you was an honor. All the speakers, activists, Twitter warriors, you rock. And to you and you and you who will join the fight soon, heart emoticon, let's rise together.
It's a really good message. Love it.
Extreme cringe. Yeah.
Oh, cringe. Women being enthusiastic about fighting for their rights. Dear.
Really sure there's no bias here. Also, I just can't get over the heart emoticon and the unironic praise of Twitter warriors. Love to all.
I mean, okay, like I can kind of get the idea of saying Twitter warriors. Like obviously Twitter is a bad place filled entirely with bad people. No, but like yeah, that I can kind of understand objecting to Twitter warriors, but the actual message itself is obviously a great message.
All my sock puppet harassment gals, haha. Are you kidding me? So why did I focus all this energy on explaining the lesbian feminist origin of TERFs? Why them when the broader gender critical umbrella includes so many other people? Ironic though it may be, the origins of this ideology started with political lesbians who have been, in large part, drowned out by their own movement. The Get the L Out survey, however, is their signature. It includes remarks on compulsory heterosexuality among many other classic lesbian feminist-specific talking points. The media seems content, or really, actively participant in scrubbing away the radical designs of the lesbian feminists, mirroring, I suppose, the broader gender-critical movement. I don't want people to forget that element of things.
Well, look, I mean, the problem is, I guess you could say the lesbian feminists really shot themselves in the foot when they decided to be so objectively and obviously correct that they were going to get people agreeing with them who weren't just lesbian separatists. Like, yes, that is true. It's kind of like if I decided to start a movement for, guys with long hair and glasses, and I decided to make a big focus of that movement, the fact that the Earth is a globe. Um, okay, I might find that actually I have more people agreeing with me than just people with long hair and glasses, or dudes with long hair and glasses. And in the exact same sense, yeah, lesbian separatists, when they decided to make a big part of their kind of focus the fact that biological males can't be women, they should have anticipated they were opening the door to a lot of people agreeing with them, and maybe at that point they might have become a minority within their own movement. But at the end of the day, they can keep fighting the good fight. It's just as far as like fighting for objective reality is concerned, they're just going to have to accept the fact that other people are going to want to be involved in that fight too.
It's not because I
Angela Wild is awesome. I'll look her up. Angela Wild. Wild mind guitar gently weeps. Okay, Google. Show me Angela Wild's. Oh, okay. Lesbians get the L out. Oh, less than 1,000 subscribers. Oh, speaking of algorithm, hey everybody, have you got your finger over that like button? Are you ready for the most important thing in the world? The good old-fashioned like spike? Because here it comes, and a 1, and a 2, and a 3, like spike. And then everyone likes it. Boom.
want to like drag down
Want to like spike?
lesbians, but because most other players in their group are well understood. Religious fascists, regular fascists, concerned parents, or
I like as like most other players, and it's just like you get two things which, by the way, by this person's own admission, are kind of like on the outskirts of the gender. Like if you looked at the Venn diagram, there was feminists, and then there was like the gender critical movement, and then it said specifically including people who wouldn't necessarily even identify themselves by that term. So it's like I have always said that I think while you could argue that maybe the term gender critical can include anybody who's critical of like transgender identity or anything like that, whatever. Maybe if you like, I think it's kind of silly to define it that way, but whatever. You can't argue that J.K. Rowling and Matt Walsh are in the same movement. Every single major gender critical person in the UK, in America, I don't know, like in America, there's a worrying tendency for people to seem to be much more keen to buddy up, and I say America, including Canada, and that buddy up with people on the right. Of course, I recently responded to some right-wing dude on Megan Murphy's channel, but in the UK, like Helen Joyce has come out and said that that Matt Walsh is part of the problem. J.K. Rowling has basically said she has no interest in aligning herself with Matt Walsh. The British gender critical feminists have been very clear about the fact that Matt Walsh is not part of their movement. So yeah, to then throw out like the fascists as if they're like a big part of the gender critical movement is an absolute joke.
ordinary queerphobes. We know the allies within the gender critical umbrella already. They're out in the world in positions of power in politics and the media, but it's important to note the ideological core and its legacy, both to understand the evil they wish to inflict and to understand the turning points, and that lesbian feminism is done a disservice by these people. Dworkin, cited in the Get the L Out survey, is dead and can't speak for herself, and no matter our disagreements on
Tell you what, if she's dead and can't speak for herself, why don't you bloody trans her? You can do it. Come on, isn't that what you guys like to do when someone's dead and can't speak for themselves? Just say that she was non-binary.
things like sex work, I'll be damned if they try and use her to justify a fucking genocide. Because the genocide is real, and here's how they're pursuing and enacting it. Gender criticals package up most of their aims.
This is like so boring. Like it's just like because it's like after so much just nonsense and like crap, it's now just like gone full mental. And like it's kind of, it doesn't feel earned. Ironically, this section started off with saying like this is an earned opinion, and it's like you're just going mental with this when literally all you've done so far is just show that you don't really understand the gender critical movement. Like how wild is it, by the way, that like 5 minutes ago this dude was like, I don't even know what gender critical means. I'm not sure why they call themselves gender critical. Blah blah blah. I have no idea. And then now you're getting, but they're definitely doing a genocide.
As individual selling points that seem reasonable or like a moderate position, alleging the other side is the extreme one. But a contradictory web starts forming. Remember when I pointed out that in one moment the claim is that trans people are only trying to escape homosexuality, and then later the argument is against trans lesbians? Well, at the risk of seeming conspiratorial, that
Okay.
may just be intentional.
Well, look, I mean, the point is that sexism is complicated, patriarchy is complicated. It's going to have multiple facets to it. It's kind of like this. Kind of reminds me of like the idiots who will be like, "Oh, if white people move into a place, then it's gentrification. But if white people leave a place, then it's white flight." And it's like, yeah, sure. The reality is that there are two different actions that can both be bad, but that's because of the wider context of systemic oppression that exists there. And in the exact same sense, it's like you're like, well, if a man who identifies as gay, or a biological male who identifies as gay, um, transes into identifying as straight, then that's bad. But if a biological male who identifies as straight transes into identifying as lesbian, then that's bad too. How does that make sense? Again, it's like it's really simple. It's because of the systemic oppression that underpins those actions and that reality. There's no contradiction here, and if there is, it's only the same contradiction that exists in any kind of nuanced viewpoint of kind of the world and systemic oppression.
The contradictions themselves matter far less than the effect where, if the points are taken in isolation, someone might agree with the point more than they agree to recognize the contradictions. In the present, that's how you
I mean, look, I want to clarify one. Are we all clear on the fact that we can agree that internalized homophobia motivating same-sex attracted biological males to, you know, basically trans is bad? We're all clear on that. And we can also agree that the sexism and male entitlement that motivates heterosexual straight men to identify as women and claim that women should sleep with them is also bad. Are we all clear on that? I mean, I know the contradiction might be a little bit too much for us to get our heads around, because how can there be gay men and straight men existing at the same time? What a contradiction. But I hope we're all clear on that contradiction. Because if you can't handle that contradiction, then you're really going to have you're going to have a rough time dealing with any aspect of society at all, because the fact that like different forces will cause different things to happen and they can be problems in different ways, is a pretty basic fact of life.
get things like one law that only denies transition to children and another that only accepts trans women into women's sports if they transition before puberty. From shifting goalposts to alternating villains.
The genocide. You won't be able to play sports, except you will be for biological males. The genocide. I'll only be able to play sports in the competitions that match with my biological sex, literally just like everybody else. Oh no.
Of the week, there are many tactics to attempt to achieve the functional legislating out of existence that Raymond first laid out in 1979. The only real change since then is the dangerous alliance that the former exclusionary lesbian feminist faction has made with those both within and beyond the establishment they once promised to destroy. If certain lesbian separatists who once saw men as an innate predator class are willing to bend their cause to shake hands with the Heritage Foundation, you can bet that contradictions are low on their concern list.
Well, look, the relationship between the gender critical movement and the Heritage Foundation is basically like the most minor thing in the world. Like, I'm not gonna say it's literally never happened, but it has happened a bit, and it's just not a particularly significant thing.
And I'm sure there are lesbian
Hey, twin twisters. Hail.
feminists who feel betrayed by the movement and its inclusion of hetero women.
Didn't know you were streaming today. Okay. I mean, I kind of stream. I will say, like, I kind of stream somewhat randomly and spontaneously. So, like, I would expect you not to know. It's actually taken a. By the way, I feel like the chat's been way less active this time. So I think maybe it's because I'm streaming later than I usually would have, or who knows. But Usually we reach 100 messages way earlier. Anyway,
women, and some others who feel there's some imagined ally barrier and the movement
wait, what? Um, I don't know what this is. Okay, so sorry, I was like trying to read that. Apparently, like this guy is concerned that the lesbians might be straight shaming J.K. Rowling.
retains its gold star ideology. But all the things Jeffries attacked queer politics over, the neoliberalism and the big tent that drowns out voices, that happened to lesbian radfems. And it was because of wave.
Okay, so there we go. There's an interesting. That is actually an interesting claim. You know, kind of. So basically, earlier on in the last response, it was pointed out that by when queer theory becomes super inclusive, it's basically including a broadly representative sample of society, which is a problem because society is sexive and oppressive, and therefore, if you have a movement that is just broadly representative of society, it's going to probably just include all of those systemic oppressions and all that kind of stuff. Here's the thing though, the gender critical movement is really not broadly representative of society because it is very not male. I mean, the obvious point, as I've pointed out before, is that I'm a dude. So, I think it would be fair to say I probably have a proportionally larger male audience. And yet, my audience is varies between 2/3 and 3/4 female. So it's pretty obvious to me that the people who are actually, involved enough in this movement to be interested in somebody, doing what I do, which is, I think, fair to say, involves like a significant amount of interest in these kind of ideas, are overwhelmingly female, which is very different from any other movement. I remember going to kind of all the different political societies at my uni, and every single one of them was majority male. So, in a very massive way, the gender critical movement cannot be accused of just being a microcosm of society. The criticism, again, of queer politics is that it is basically a microcosm of society. You get a huge number of men in the movement, and they dominate just like they do in patriarchal society in general. And the big thing is, that's not really true in the gender critical movement. Okay, the thing is, you could say it kind of is, in that while there are relatively few men, you still could say they dominate a little bit. Certainly, they dominate relative to their kind of representation in the movement. But the thing is, even if that's true in the gender critical movement, which really doesn't have that many men, imagine how much more true that is for the queer theory movement, which has a huge number of men in it. So that's kind of the thing. Like, I'm not denying that actually, yeah, you could say that by dint of the gender critical movement being convincing enough to have, for example, convinced somebody like me to be like, hey, this is nonsense. I'm going to start a YouTube channel where I respond to people saying this nonsense and debunk them. And the result of that is now I'm here being a dude, making my opinions heard, and, in that sense, of course, being a male voice in a place that would otherwise perhaps be proportionally more represented by females. It's not, I would say, it's not, if it is a problem, I mean, it is a problem, but it is a problem that is outweighed by the benefit that it speaks to how popular the movement is. Because that's the thing. The gender critical movement, if it were less popular, it would be way more female probably. Because, obviously men wouldn't have any reason to be involved in it at all, because it is a very clearly kind of female-oriented movement. But yeah, I mean, again, you compare this to the queer theory movement, and it's just night and day. The queer theory movement is popular, and it's filled with dudes.
Waving trans exclusion as their flag, not despite it. Okay, yeah, sorry that took so long to explain. And also to make, honestly. There have been causes for delays. Chief among them is the auditory disruption and psychic damage caused by my neighbor's dog howling for
I just thought about the fact that I can imagine this person being a furry, like very realistically, and not like neighbor's dog. Okay, let's look at the most recent comment. Okay, Mass Creation Broadcast, who watched my channel, commented something, but he didn't comment anything critical. That's pretty funny. Wait a minute.
Thanks again to Etienne Garand.
No, see, I remembered actually. This guy has a video called, well, it doesn't matter what the video is called, but the thumbnail literally says, "The CIA owns this," and I just find that to be a really funny kind of, tacit admission. Like, I assume that's not what it's supposed to be saying, but, like, the implication of it is a bit dodgy. Anyway, so we finished that video, and it's done. And that's my response to it. Yeah, it was pretty boring. I'm just okay. So, any strong preferences about what we should do now? We've got what? Maybe half an hour. Not so long. Somebody sent me something on okay. Do you want to hear my my responses to me via tweet? Okay, that's fine actually. So I got some responses from people who actually agree with me, so I'm fine with that. Don't worry about that. Okay, it's a response. I thought it was gonna be bad. Basically, I made like a kind of joke, which was really funny. The joke was that I said there was like a post on Twitter that was about like some Germans who were marching for like pro bestiality, and I kind of tweeted, in a funny way. I was like, "This is the worst movement to ever come out of Germany," like the classic joke. And then yeah, somebody like responded with something which of course made reference to other movements might come out of Germany. And when I saw the notification, I was like, "Oh, is this some stupid person like trying to make some kind of ridiculous comparison to that in light of gender critical views?" And I clicked on it. I was like, "Oh, actually, no, that's fine." What do we got? Wait, let me read what's happening in the chat. Okay. You know what, actually, things do. You know what, Loris? Oh, hey. Sorry, I wasn't reacting to this. Let me just do. Did I get any more? I hope not, because like I haven't been looking at the chat. But okay, yeah, good. So I think we're still at a point where super chats are certainly infrequent enough that I can do this. So I'll do the applause thing because that's like my thing now. I feel like at some point, like I mean, maybe if I was getting, I don't know, like let's say hypothetically, like thousands of super chats every single time I streamed. I mean, hypothetically, of course, I don't expect that or anything, but maybe if that happened, then I would stop individually applauding every single one. But it's just like while like I actually do like the fact that I've so far averaged a super chat every single stream. Having said that, okay, let's stop clapping. There is now the expectation, like it's happened 4 times now. I've streamed 1 super chat, which is like kind of nice, like that reliability of like, yeah, I stream, I get 1 super chat. But yeah, inevitably at some point it's not going to happen. Like I don't think I can realistically expect to get a super chat every single time I stream. So the first time it doesn't happen is going to be kind of disappointing. And then having said that, in many ways, like the longer I wait until it happens, the more it's going to be like it's going to be like it's going to be hard not to seem disappointed. It's going to be like I'm going to just finish the stream. Like, oh, okay, well I guess nobody gave a super chat. But yeah, this time someone gave a super chat, and of course that person is Layla, with a lol emoji that says critical hit. So that's yeah. Thank you very much, Layla. Really appreciated. And apart from this, Casey bad streamer. Oh goodness, yeah. So people are Yes, someone saying, Casey, thank Layla for the super sticker, blah blah blah. Um, yeah, I do apologize for not having seen it. Part of the reason why, just in case, so a lot of people didn't hear this. When I started streaming, for some reason the like chat wasn't visible on my OBS, so I've kind of had to like just check it every now and then, clicking somewhere else. And it turns out, so what I was doing, I was reading it in the chat here, but it wasn't showing up. So there we go. I apologize. Apparently I need to kind of reconnect the stream, which obviously once I'd already started streaming, I didn't want to do that. But yeah, I'll do that for next time, so I'll be able to react. Because yeah, I do really very sincerely appreciate super chats. Um, and yeah, it's great. So big big thank you, and I'm just sorry, Layla, that you had to wait for that thank you. Um, okay. Apart from that, um, anyway, we're what basically we. Oh wait, I was gonna read. Okay. Um, okay, so the good news is I actually did get a comment. Somebody said that believing that biological males can't be women is comparable to being against race mixing or denying the denying the thing you're not allowed to deny. I don't want to say the word. I just like to be a little bit cautious about saying problem words. Um, don't worry, OMG. I'm so apologetic. Um, I did get a response from CritFacts, but I don't know that I can. I'm not going to respond to it, I don't think. So it says, do you want to hear the tweet with no context? I didn't say belief specifically. I said rhetoric. The things that person is actually saying, the attitudes they are trying to create in other people. Um, okay, spoiler alert, it doesn't change my opinion. They said basically, uh, if somebody's free speech is going to harm marginalized people, should workplaces be allowed to refuse to hire them? And I said, no, I don't support a system of capitalist totalitarianism where your ability to get a job is conditional upon you changing your beliefs, regardless of how abhorrent said beliefs are. And then, of course, they just responded, well, I didn't say having the beliefs, I just said stating the beliefs. And it's like, I don't think it's a meaningful distinction. And yeah, I mean, my take is like, I should clarify. I've never been in the kind of South Park school of like, you can't be angry at people's speech or whatever else, like I've always recognized, of course, there's certain speech which is bad. I don't even like, I mean, I used to be against the idea of hate speech, like, the idea of like there being certain things that are considered so harmful that they should be illegal. I used to think that was nonsense. And then I went through a period of like, actually, you know what? No, maybe it does make sense. There are some things that are so harmful that they're kind of considered illegal. And then now I'm kind of in the position of actually no, I think it is a very dangerous road to go around down to say like that there's speech that should be considered illegal. I go back and forth on it. But anyway, the thing is, I definitely, regardless of anything else, I definitely think um corporate, like, it's kind of funny, how like people are always like, hey, this is a private corporation, they can do whatever they want. I'm literally the exact opposite mentality. Like, honestly, I'm I can go one way or the other on like, should the government be allowed to ban some things? Like, some speech is just so harmful, it's so wrong, it's so deleterious to society being good that it should be banned. Like, I would not be categorically against that, but I would categorically be against the idea that companies should be able to say, hey, do you want to get a job with us to be able to eat, to be able to live in your house, to be able to afford electricity, food, to be able to take care of your family? Well, you're not allowed to say anything we disagree with on your social media. That is psychopathic. Like, that, I'm just like, no. Like, if the government wants to say, oh, you called somebody the N word on Twitter, so you're getting thrown in prison for 4 months or whatever, however, I don't know how long people usually get thrown in prison for things like that. Like, okay, you know, is that a waste of people's time? Maybe. Is it going against principle of like absolute free speech? Maybe, whatever, again, I mean, I would kind of say, I could again really fall into the category of like, well, is that even free speech worth protecting, all that kind of stuff? But whatever, fine, whatever. But for a company to say, we don't like what you said, we, the company, the rich multi-million or billion-dollar kind of people, industry, or corporation, we're making ourselves the arbiters of what you're allowed to say, and we think that your tweet about whatever was bad, so you're going to get fired. You're not going to be allowed to buy food, or you're going to have to go apply for benefits. Again, assuming that's even an option, like it's just yeah, screw that, like legit. And I don't care whether or not it's a belief or what you said. So screw that. Anyway. Okay. Loris Tyrell says that I don't like saying the word fascist because obviously, like I'm just aware of YouTube being very, I don't want to incur YouTube's wrath, and it's just there's so much, Having said that, like obviously DRAs can say it and it's fine, but whatever. I'm just gonna say Fism. Let's do that. That will solve all our problems. And again, you'll be like, well, you've already said it, but the thing is, I genuinely think with YouTube, like it is actually a quantity thing, where it's like if you just mention a word offhandedly, I think the way YouTube's kind of like controversial algorithm works is kind of like, oh, they just said it once, whatever. But like, for example, if I, literally said the word or, certain problematic words over and over again, I think, oh, that was a funny noise. YouTube would then be like, oh, let's see what this guy's saying. Is this appropriate? All that kind of stuff. And then, maybe again, I think YouTube's chill with me, but like I know, I mean, the classic example I go back to is that I've had instances where videos which I've said are not appropriate for monetization have then actually been changed to monetizable by YouTube, implying that somebody at YouTube has literally watched my videos, decided they're okay, and approved them for monetization. Because generally, as a rule of thumb, because I don't know if y'all know this, but you're supposed to kind of grade your own videos, and obviously I on the side of caution and just grade pretty much every single video I make as non-monetizable. But yeah, occasionally YouTube will be like, actually, you know what? No, we think this video is monetizable. And I'm like, oh, thank you, YouTube. Thank you. Anyway, so yeah, women, maybe Fism appeals more to women because of like the fact it offers security. Which is, I mean, I could see that being true. Like, I think is, I mean, obviously, it would be interesting to look at the statistics. It definitely does seem like there were lots of women who were like into. I mean, like the reality is, there will always be women who are, kind of, internalized misogyny and basically enthused, actively enthused by the systems of oppression that exist around them because, to be honest, they're comfortable with those systems, and therefore their main priority is how can those systems bring about greater security in their immediate lives. So it's kind of like they don't really care about like whether or not the Fists are going to increase patriarchy and traditional gender roles and that kind of stuff because they've already kind of accepted the traditional gender roles. They're all right with it. It's kind of nice wearing makeup and a dress and like cooking in the kitchen for your man or whatever. I don't know. So it's like, but I am pretty concerned about those commies, or whatever, or the striking workers. So we do need a nice strong man to come in and make sure that they're kept in line. Imagine if old old Hitler was sexy. I don't think. I mean, I would assume even by the standards of the time, do people think he was attractive? What did he actually look like? Let me check. Okay, Google. Hot. Okay, no, okay, I'm gonna get rid of the hot. I don't even want to like. I actually like. I don't even want to Google it. Okay. Um. Ugh. Wasn't he like? I mean, yeah, like he was almost at ContraPoints levels of being on all sorts of stuff, wasn't he? Yeah, he. I don't know. Like, it's not. It's not a great look. I mean, I would say like in some sense, he definitely sort of does just look like in some of these photos, he looks very kind of run down, which would definitely cohere with the idea of him being some sort of addict. Um, but like also, I think like the fact that like a lot of propaganda depicts him as like a pig. Like I think like I've seen a lot of it kind of makes me think he does look a bit piggy. Um, but then having said that, like what if he'd actually like what if there was a guy who looked just like him but was like a really good guy? Like would we then think because you look at him now, I don't know. Like the thing is there are people who say like he looks evil. Like he just has an evil look. And I would honestly say like I don't really buy that. Like I don't look at him and think that he looks evil. He just looks kind of just whatever. Um Weirdly whatever. Do you ever just like think about how wild it is that World War II happened? Like that's kind of what I'm about. Um like I just think to myself like and it's wild how recent it was. Like it's kind of crazy to think that in the 1940s, like they were working on computers then. I'm pretty sure TV was just around the corner. They were talking to each other on the radio. They were watching films. And then, like, they literally had a war, like a massive war. Like, it was crazy. Like, I genuinely just, I don't know. Like, it feels like it was, like, it feels like society was way too modern in a lot of ways for that level of destruction to have happened. Because I remember, like, I watched a video by Shadiversity where he was basically saying how apparently in like the Middle Ages, people actually liked war, and it was because like death was so ubiquitous and so common that like like if it's a choice between dying in the plague or in the cold and dying in a war where you can be like, oh yeah, let's go fight in a war. But like you think about like 1940s and 30s, you could just you could like have a fun time then. Like it would not be the worst place in the world to live. Like, if I was in the 1930s and someone said, "Hey, do you want to die in a war?" I would be like, "Okay, that's not a tough one at all. Like, no, thank you." If I was in like the Middle Ages and someone said, "Hey, do you want to die in a war?" I'd be like, "You know what? That doesn't sound so bad. Like, that's not terrible." Like, if I was like magically transported back to like 10 1095 or whenever it was, and someone was like, "Oh, we're going on a crusade, want to come with?" I'd be like, "Well, I was planning on dying because I accidentally ate some gone off meat or something, but actually, you know what? Yeah, let's go have some fun, let's go." Seems like a right lark to me. And I'm not expecting to live, but at least I'm gonna have some fun. Of course, I suppose if I was transported back in time, maybe I'd go for like the old, like change human history thing. Take everyone else down with me. Um, I don't know how I do that, to be honest. Um, did you study history at uni? Do I sound like I studied history at uni? Because I don't think so. I mean, sorry. To clarify, I know that I didn't study history at uni, but I don't think I sound like I studied history at uni. I feel like I sound like somebody who just uh like kind of like I feel like I have the sort of like kind of bro philosophy where it's like, hey man, did you ever think about like what if when I see green, I say it's green, And when you see green, like basically like Vsauce stuff, you know, like you think you think it's green, but it's actually a totally different thing. But like you've learned to call it green, and isn't that like weird? And like we would never know, man. Like that kind of thing. I feel like that's my attitude towards history. Like I'm on that level of just you know, like the Joe Rogan, like the Joe Rogan kind of questions. Like I would be there talking to a history professor, like, hey, do you think that um, Adolf Hitler could be killed if like he had like what if he had an army of chimps, like chimpanzees, because they're like huge. Do you think that could have worked? Or like what if instead of the A bomb, they just dropped a bomb of gorillas? Yeah, I think that would have really had an effect, man. If you like, what if was he on DMT? I think if everyone had done DMT, then it would have been all right. Anyway, let me answer all the questions I was ignoring. Um, so, I've really still got that Jake Novak "I Want to Be the Next SNL cast member" song in my head. Okay, where are we? So, uh, let's read every single question. Okay, so, um, okay, there's some people having serious conversations which we're going to ignore. Um, oh, okay. Wait a minute, some handle. I didn't know you made videos. Or do I? Ah, this is interesting. Some handle, I have subscribed to you. I can't absolutely promise that it will result in me watching many or every of your videos, but at least I've subscribed. Have you looked up Italian futurism? I think I've heard of it. Okay, Google, search Italian futurism. Wait a minute. Um, so it's just like an artistic style. Kind of reminds me of Max Ernst, who is my favorite artist. What's he then? Okay, yeah, I thought so. Because it looked like that to me, like surrealism. Like to me, it looks like surrealism, and I like surrealism. Um. Uh. People who think we live in this insanely volatile time right now, compared to World War II era or Vietnam era, it's nothing. Yeah, people. Yeah, like which again, like who would want to go to war? Um. And even then, like you look at like how like even like the Ukraine war going on right now. Maybe I shouldn't mention it. I feel like I just forget that everything's controversial, but whatever. Sorry, YouTube. Um, even the special military operation going on right now, um, is like the death toll for that is still like pretty low. Like it's kind of weird. It's almost like what are they like? I genuinely like part of me is actually like, how are they like what are they even doing that so few people are biting the bullet? Like how are they doing that? How are they like it kind of like I find it weird in a way that wars could be drawn out for so long because like how do they manage that? And like you'd think that people would just you'd be like, okay, well we've got a big army, they've got a big army, let's just smash them into each other, and then 100,000 people would die in a few days, and then at the end of it you'd be like, well, okay, it looks like but no, but which again leads me to my conclusion of I need to take off. Have a good night. Great to see everyone. Right, bye. I won't be here for too much longer myself. Yeah, it leads me to my conclusion that it's like because people don't want lots of people to die. Like that's it. Like there's a general aversion right now for people dying. So even when you're literally having a full-on war, it's like, well, okay, we don't want to, have things too extreme. Shadiversity is not a channel I thought would be mentioned here. Well, I do like the channel. So there we go. Oh, sorry, Lisa, you wanted to know what I studied. If you're still here, you'll find out. But if you're not, then looks like you're not going to find out. Um, International relations. Boom. Uh, oh, wait, where are we? Oh, crud schools. The time was quite progressive. Women were on the way to emancipation. I assume that's talking about like 1930s. Yeah. Well, you had Rosie the Riveter. I always like. I do kind of think about the fact that like something I think about a lot is like the fact that I kind of like I feel like there's this assumption that like in the 40s everyone was racist. And like I feel like a lot for a lot of people that even extends into like the 60s and the 70s, which of course is funny because I feel like it's probably a lot more continuous with now. Like not quite the same, but basically like the mainstream. Well, okay, yeah, I mean, I wonder like at what point the mainstream point of view became that it's bad to be racist. You know, because I feel like I remember seeing this thing and like okay, so I was thinking about To Kill a Mockingbird, and it's like that was made in the 60s, obviously, but the mainstream point of view it's presenting is yeah, it's bad to be racist. Like there's no ambiguity to the fact Atticus Finch is the good guy, and it's like pretty clear that the audience is supposed to be there. Like, and you kind of think about how like obviously nowadays you think about films like Driving Miss Daisy or Green Book, where obviously there's kind of this rather, you know, I guess uncomplicated message of just hey, racism's bad, wouldn't it be great if white people and black people got along or whatever. And we like to make fun of the liberal elite for, you know, being like, oh yes, good film, made me feel good about how I'm not racist or whatever. But I feel like that was probably a thing, yeah, like in the 40s, no, in the 60s as well. So then yeah, I think to myself like um when when did it change? Like, you know, if let's say for example there were films in the 1600s, like let's say that they had film in the 1600s, or maybe books or plays, because I know they did have those. So let's say like Shakespeare writes a play. Hear me out here, okay? Like Shakespeare writes Othello because Othello was black, right? So he writes Othello, but instead it's like a story about how Othello and a white guy kind of get along, and like they're good buddies. And then at the end, Othello invites, you know, fucking like Richard III to the cookout or something. Like, how well would that be received by kind of audiences of the 1600s? Would they have been sat there like, yes, yes, very progressive, yeah, so, you know, I mean, those, you know, racism. I mean, that's really more of a, you know, northern thing, isn't it? You know, like sure, maybe in Doncaster or Rotherham they're racist, but we're not. You know, we're theatre goers, for goodness sake. Like that's kind of what I wonder. Like, has it always been the case that the kind of mainstream publicly acceptable opinion has been that you're not supposed to be racist? And I know some people are like, "What are you talking about, you idiot?" Like, obviously there was slavery, but like even then, like I wonder, like even when there was slavery, was actually it's still like the kind of mainstream opinion of like, well, sure, we got slavery, but you know, we're not going to be racist about it. We're not a bunch of slack-jawed yokel rednecks. I don't know. Anyway, um, because yeah, to clarify my point, I'm not suggesting people weren't racist in the past because people are racist nowadays. But my point is like people are racist nowadays, often despite kind of the mainstream point of view being that you shouldn't be racist. So the implication might be that people were racist in the past, but the mainstream point of view is like, oh, you shouldn't be racist. Whatever. Anyway, um, uh, men need to. I like how the first men need to stop starting wars for mummy, but then it was changed to money. But I like to think that mummy is actually the more accurate one. Like, yeah, okay, yeah. Oh, Lisa pointed that out too. Um, every generation believes that next has lost the plot. Yeah, I think Gen Z is doing all right. They're technically the generation after me. Um, okay, blah 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 blah. Futurist cookbook. Okay, Loris, I'll Google it now so that I inevitably end up at a later point not reading it, loading too many tabs, and then deciding to just close all my tabs because there's way too many. Um, okay. Okay, boom. I grew up in the USA in the 80s/90s. We never really saw race. Well, yeah, I mean, like that's when in the 80s that was when Driving Miss Daisy came out. So obviously by the 80s it was like, you know, like in the 80s they were definitely clear on the fact that they were like, no, I'll tell you what's a good movie: some black dude driving a white dude around. Sorry, white lady. Um, like they knew what was up. I made it into Gen Z, so we're not okay. Oh dear, useless. Um, yes. All right. So now I am actually going to go because I've caught up with the chat, which was my main goal. So everybody, your homework for this live stream is to find out when it became unacceptable to be racist. And again, like I'm not asking for when slavery ended or anything like that. I'm wondering, like, at what point could you make a movie, or like, so let's say, let's assume that cars and films have existed for all of human history. At what point would Driving Miss Daisy not be a mainstream success? You know, like if you showed a bunch of people in the 1400s Driving Miss Daisy, would they have been like, yes, I like this film about a black guy and a white lady getting along? Or would they have gone, that's not right. They're not supposed to. That's my question. Maybe, okay, screw it. Like maybe in the 1400s it wouldn't be about, it would be um, a carriage instead of a car. Um, and Miss Daisy would be Queen Elizabeth I, and the black guy would be Othello. Othello was the only black guy who existed back then. They didn't have any other black guy. It's just like Othello, and that's it. Anyway, all right. Bye, everybody. See you later. Alligator. In a while. Crocodile. Okay. Bye, 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 bye. Oh, damn it. Someone pointed out that Birth of a Nation exists. Okay. Maybe that is a good counterpoint, actually. It wasn't